се какво съм аз. Чакаш ли ме в късен чат? Търси се в моя ум. Какво помисли си на ум? Силен ли е твоя гняв?
Hi everyone and welcome back. It's your boy, the Old Wardrobe SMR. Currently it's the Old Wardrobe Experiment. Or you can just call me Rado. It's been a while since I've done a video or two, and I have some announcements to make. This will not be our usual whispering video. It will be more of a soft-spoken SMR reading of Bulgarian magazine, which is a monthly periodical, and it's one of my favorites, or used to be, before it went online only and without physical copies. But physical copies of it from back in the day could still be found. And this specific one, which we'll be reading through, is about the 65th anniversary of the end of World War II, and that's what the title says here in Bulgarian, 65 years from the victory over Nazism. This will be an experimental video. I've been trying to find enough desire, should I say, or just I don't want to say courage, and to start making ASMR related, either educational or just other types of videos, including reading, since world history is a main hobby of mine and has been ever since I was a kid. Back in the day, I'm 33 now. Back in the day, when Discovery Channel was still a channel which wasn't centered only on reality shows, and it had excellent schedule and program of many documentaries about the World War II, the Scrap Heap Challenge, the early Mythbusters and whatnot. I used to I loved watching it, and that's one of the sources of how I learned English, because I'm Bulgarian. Even long before I had the proficiency of, or the opportunity to study it proficiently in school. And so this, along with my passion for reading, and I just loved reading and loved buying encyclopedias as a kid. Everyone who knows me knows this. Led to me having the hobby of just being curious about everything and trying to have an open mind about everything. And now that I have a channel, I said to myself, why shouldn't you start doing something which may be of use to other people, and offering your unique perspective on things, namely from historical or point of view, or geopolitical. I do not want to promise anything. We'll see how the channel develops over time, but we may, or you may actually have the pleasure of watching such videos, which I'll try to make on different topics, about certain topics, including modern, contemporary, and medieval history, 17th and 18th century history, and even ancient history. Why not? So whether this will happen, only time will tell. I want to say a couple of things. As you probably will notice or have noticed, I've created an intro for the channel, and I want to specifically thank one of my most favorite Bulgarian rock bands, Ostava, 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 for their permission and their gesture of allowing me to use one of their newest songs from their album called Oxygen, or in Bulgarian Kislorod, from 2022. The song itself is called Teст, and I encourage you to visit, buy it if you're from foreign country, or if you're watching from abroad. Most probably you are, because I deliberately want to, for now at least, develop the channel internationally. I'll leave links to their Facebook page and overall online presence. Back in the days, I've been following them for 20 years, and since one of their earliest or first album, Ping Pong, and I got in contact with Georgiev, who's actually their guitarist. Or actually, I wrote to the band, and I asked them if I could use this song, because I think it would fit very nicely in terms of its message for an experimental ASMR channel. And lo and behold, they gave me the permission, or Georgi Georgiev did. He's the guitarist of Ostava. I spoke with him, and if he's watching this, which I doubt, but if he'll be watching this, or if he's watching this, I want to specifically say huge thanks, golyamo благодаря, as we say in Bulgarian, for the permission to use their song. Again, you can browse their music. They used to be classified as Britpop. Actually, they sing in Bulgarian, so I would say they're very contemporary, modern band, one of the best, most influential bands in Bulgaria, along with some other few which I love, but they've had huge presence on the Bulgarian rock and pop scene for 20 years. And I want to wish them to continue doing this for many more years. Their vocalist, Svile Noev, actually has a very specific voice and tone of singing. And this paired with the brilliance of their lyrics and the overall magnificent arrangement of the music and the way I just love them. Apart from this, I listen to a lot of genres, but this is the first thing I wanted to mention. Huge thanks to Ostava for them letting me use their song Teст, which will be in the intro. And this will be the official intro of the channel from now on. Another announcement as well. I actually created a Facebook page and an Instagram page for the channel, not because I want to take myself too seriously, but because I want to declare my presence, so to speak, on the internet, because I've had cases of friends and acquaintances who've had their videos stolen, let's put it this way, from certain thieves of other people's work based in third world countries, or even first world countries. Thieves are a global factor everywhere. But with the case of my friend, he used to have a huge channel with over 60k or 60,000 subscribers, until a guy from actually India stole some of his vids, and he barely managed to recuperate his channel. So my request to you and to all my future subscribers is, as before I manage to get hold of YouTube's mechanisms for protecting my videos, please let me know and report anybody who's stealing, or if you see any of my videos. Again, I doubt someone will actually try to steal a video of mine, but we live in an unpredictable world, and that's not impossible, let's say it this way. So my attempts to create a Facebook page and an Instagram page, I wanted to just go ahead of them and try to declare my presence in advance. To all my subscribers in the current and future, I just want to say thank you for the support and for the vigilance. When I started all of this, I said to myself, I will not allow this to become a serious thing. I said to myself, let's just see where the whole experiment will take me. Some of my earliest subscribers and my friends and acquaintances who will be following the channel from the beginning know that this channel was aimed, at the beginning at least, to be more of an ASMR channel. And as you can see, we continue with the ASMR, and we'll continue. But in the future, there may be more topics on history, science, and whatnot, and my take on them, my viewpoint, my opinion on them, which paired with the ASMR, I hope will not only be relaxing, but will be interesting to some of you. Aside from my, one would say, almost childish, but let's just say it, Lego obsession. I just love Lego, so we'll continue to build that. I'll continue to offer you such videos as well. So these are the overall announcements I wanted to make, despite my unwillingness and, how should I put it, laziness at times to move the channel in a more, I don't want to say competitive direction, but towards a more specifically for me, characteristic of me type of a way. I think it was about time. So the experiments will continue, and that's how the old wardrobe ASMR turns into the old wardrobe experiment. So, L'Europeo from April 2010. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. 4 euro or 8 levs. It's still 2023, and here in Bulgaria we're still working with our national currency. We haven't switched to the euro currency yet, but most probably and inevitably this will happen in the future. This is issue number 13, and on the cover page we have an iconic photo. Again, this magazine is my favorite and has been my favorite of all the other magazines globally and locally. Just happens to be the Bulgarian offbeat version of it, because for those of you who are probably aware, this started in Italy, and a lot of the most brilliant interviews with a lot of global politicians, decision makers, and whatnot have been made by journalists working for this this magazine, this media. Back in the day, in Bulgaria, it entered around 13 years ago, but it switched to online, and this specific issue of it has an iconic photo. Here it writes in Bulgarian, but it says That's the kiss of the victory. That's an American sailor caressing his loved one on Times Square, New York, on the 14th of August, 1945. And you know a good photography when you look at it. It just transports you to that time. I don't know if some of you have this type of sensation or desire to travel through time, but me being an escapist of nature, I constantly and up to this day continue traveling in my head through such periods. Imagine standing on Times Square at that time. Truly historic. And so there are many different articles on different topics. For example, about Hitler, a man who decided to become a god, by Barbara Trotter. And that's his history. But also about, let's see, to be a prophet is a particular kind of loneliness. Wolf Messing from 1963. Is it divine or satanic to be able to read the mind of others and the thoughts of others and to see into the future? One of the biggest phenomena of the 20th century is a polychew, a lunatic, and a fortune teller. It's about Wolf Messing. To be honest, I've forgotten who he is. Probably we'll have to read this as well sometimes. We'll see. Some gross photos as well. These are all historical photos. For example, taken from the time. And Europel have cited the used photos on the back, as you can see here. All of the photos are cited and they can be taken. You can inform yourself about them. And it says here that the redaction of the Bulgarian Europel has taken care to get the permission of the original creators of the copyright for the photo. So every photo right here has a permission to be used, but it's historical and it's completely factual. For example, we have a commander, it says here at the bottom, a Russian commander of a storm brigade in the Battle of Stalingrad, 1943. And an article by one of our journalists who's writing articles from Europel, the Bulgarian Europel, which says, you're not only, you're not wounded, you're only dead. And that's a kind of a snippet from a poem by the Russian Lieutenant Degin, who's telling the whole story of World War II, Stalingrad, and the end of Nazism and the Reich. I wanted to get some excerpts. The reason I've made this video is a specific article because it's the 24th of July and a lot of you know that currently there's a specific movie which is very popular, and that's Christopher Nolan's biographical movie about Oppenheimer. And there's an article about the atomic bomb right here. Including for Normandy. And there, the D-Day, which is very, very iconic. But the specific article, The Porcelain Gods of War, That's about Georgy Zhukov and Konstantin Rokossovsky, one of the two most iconic Russian commanders from World War II. A very good article. I may read it someday. But I wanted to read this, or excerpts from it, or at least to translate it to you. That's the article by Plamen Petrov, The Philosophy of Destruction, about the so-called atomic breaths, as he calls them, of Truman and Churchill, namely the creation of the atomic bomb. And here we have a photo of Wilhelm, as it's in German, Wilhelm Röntgen. It says that he gets the Nobel Prize for physics in 1901 for the discovery of the X-rays, the X-ray. And so, yeah, it begins by saying that Bernard Shaw, drinking tea in London and writing that in the art of creating life, man hasn't discovered anything new. While in the art of destruction, as it says here, he surpasses the nature itself. He says this on the 11th of October of 1901. And continues, deep in my lonely heart, I feel that there will be days coming in which man will not be a man, but will be, I'm translating it from Bulgarian, as you can see. I don't know if this is the exact quote, but I'm translating it from Bulgarian. It says, days will come in which man will not be man, but it will be a bunch of meat put together by empty bones. Saying next to him, continues the article, that later, at the beginning of World War I, Joseph Thomson becomes his neighbor. Joseph Thomson, says the article, has won the Nobel Prize for physics as the discoverer of the electron. And he is inviting into his house one of the most valued scientists, Einstein, Rutherford, Lord Rayleigh, who's also a Nobel Prize winner in the field of physics. And among them is Robert Wood, says the article. Saying that after drinking, Lord Rayleigh got up and said, "Gentlemen, we have to find ways how to make the war more terrible. I believe that the more gruesome and terrible means of destruction there will be found in, the more terrible war will become for the world. And therefore, lo and behold, we may as well end up living without any war or bloodshed," says Lord Rayleigh in that meeting with Joseph Thomson and the other Einstein, Rutherford. And the article continues. World War I ends 4 years later, and then becomes the bigger, more destructive, and more prominent scientific in terms of scientific breakthroughs war, and that's World War II. And then continue with information about Röntgen, how on 8th of November 1895, a man with long unkept beard by the names of Joachim Konrad Röntgen is about to end his experiments in his semi-lit up laboratory in the University of Würzburg, Bayern or Bavaria. Sunk into his long mathematical equations, his attention is drawn by a magical, says the article, glistening at the other end of the room. Quote, almost scared, I reached the place from where the light was protruding. And the light itself is a glowing piece of paper covered by the interesting compound made of barium. Barium platinocyanidus says here in Bulgarian, but I'm translating it in English. Correct me if this is the actual name of it. For which, after so it's susceptible to luminescence after being projected or after being lit up with a specific lightning. And that's how Wilhelm Röntgen says there is no radiation, yet the piece of paper is lit up, turns around, looks around his cabinet, and then finds out that the only appliance which is working is at the other end of the lab, and on top of that it's covered by a thick piece of cardboard. When he pulls or turns off the appliance, the piece of paper ceases to glow. When he turns on the appliance, the glowing is back. And when my hand, without a purpose, was stuck between the appliance and a piece of paper, I saw the bones of my hand, and it was like magic, says a week later Röntgen himself. That's how the X-rays, radiation. Continuing, the author of the article, Paul Petrov, continues with Fermi on the other page. And all the other, at that time, famous, brilliant scientists who've made the huge leaps in the atomic or physical discoveries, in the words of physics. The discovery of the splitting of the atomic nucleus by Enrico Fermi. That's how the mechanism of the chain reaction of the separation of the heavy atomic nucleus is found. And as a byproduct, the separation of unheard of by then atomic energy. And then the article continues about all the scientists who are talking about the hypothesis or hypothesizing about how during World War II the Germans are almost ready to create an atomic bomb for military purposes. Most of them are skeptic. Neville Chamberlain himself, says the article, says that I'm certain that anything will not come out of it. Let's not forget, however, that's my commentary, that Chamberlain did other prophetic things. I'm saying it ironically. And he himself forbids the financing with big funds of this project. In other words, for the creation of a British bomb, atomic bomb, back in 1940. Then the Mould Group. But then, after Winston Churchill comes, the research is back in action and funds are relocated for this purpose. The creation of the atomic bomb is a plausible undertaking in the near future of 1 or 2 years, says the article here. That's a quote from Churchill, by the way. The uranium bomb will have destructive force which will be equivalent to 1,800,000 kilograms of TNT. And that's how Roosevelt was informed as well. And how the British Special Service or Secret Services had to cope with the biggest problem of Germany creating the atomic bomb first. And here you have the bombing of the Norwegian harbor Narvik, which the Germans are trying to keep because in Norway Germany had the best or most convenient access to the elements needed for the creation of the atomic bomb, and that's how Brits tried to sabotage them, or at least try to prevent them from creating it. And then we, of course, continue with Einstein. And then we have a picture of General Leslie Groves. For those of you who watched Oppenheimer, Matt Damon plays him. He's played by Matt Damon, the role of General Leslie Groves, who's the chief engineer and the main, let's say, supervisor of Project Manhattan, and oversees the creation of the first means for the testing of the atomic bomb. By whom? By the man himself, Oppenheimer. Here, a photo of his after the ending of the Project Manhattan in Los Alamos, 1950. And then, if you've watched the movie, or at least if you've read about the history, it was Truman and his decisiveness to continue with the creation, or rather the producing of the hydrogen bomb, which Oppenheimer warned against in hopes that humanity will be preserved. But given that the Soviet Union already had means to produce a hydrogen bomb, I think, or at least he did not. Pardon me, that's not historically correct. However, Truman decided that it will be of best interest for the interests of the United States and the democratic world for the Americans to have the hydrogen bomb first. I agree with him, although Oppenheimer used to, or at least tried to, act in a pacifist way. He knew very well that this was unavoidable, but he had tried to preserve the world, or at least to preserve or I don't want to say prevent the United States from creating, but to warn the society in the United States and to be against creation of the hydrogen bomb. And on the opposite page we have Colonel Tibbets waving from the cockpit of Enola Gay, the plane which launched or dropped the atomic bomb over Hiroshima. Quote, with a deep, emotional, and moved by emotion voice, Groves whispered, "That's the end of the war. A couple of these bombs, and with Japan is over, or Japan is done." Followed by the famous quote by Oppenheimer in the 32nd stanza from Bhagavad Gita. Which is so famous. And then we have Kenneth Bainbridge bitterly saying, "We're all sons of bitches." And that's the actual Trinity test and the results of it and the reactions of all three. Groves, Oppenheimer, and Kenneth Bainbridge. The light coming from the explosion is indescribable. Everything was lit up with such a force stronger than the light of the sun itself. This is the beauty for which the big and great poets have only dreamed of, without being able to illustrate it. Words are not enough for someone to describe to all who haven't been there what this is like. These are words by President Truman. Actually, it was a report which was sent to him by Bainbridge, Groves, and Oppenheimer. And here we have a comment by the author of the article, which I agree to 100%. The failure of the United States Secret Services to preserve the information and the data for the creation of the atomic bombs is one of their biggest failures, actually. Because, for those of you who are familiar, it turned out that a lot of the information, even when there was deep secret, was leaking out through Soviet spies of, well, Israeli origin, let's just put it this way. And not only. And that's how it says here. The primary atomic spies are Klaus Fuchs, David Greenglass, Donald McLean, Bruno Pontecorvo, and Alan May. They systematically reveal and leak information from Manhattan using ultra-dangerous espionage tactics. A quote by Alan May saying that when I learned that the Americans were creating the the atomic bomb or about to create it. I guess that it will be dangerous for Russia. That's how I got in contact with the KGB and got him a lot of information, says the British physicist Alan May. He's the first one to be condemned for being an atomic spy. And Theodore Hall, who barely at 19, at 1944, barely 19, he's already with communist type of ideals and reveals this information about Fat Man. Hall says later, in 1998, much later, decades later, that he did it because he was afraid of that the United States could have become a monopolist in the atomic armament. This was a threat, says he in his quote. The United States could have become Nazi Germany. I disagree wholeheartedly, but the traitor's way of thinking is very, very specific. And then we have the article ends with how on the 3rd of August, Truman decides that on the 3rd of August, Hiroshima will be bombed. The military base on Tinian Island is in full battle readiness. Nobody knows, says the article here, what these bombs are more specific or extraordinary than the others. Nobody knows. This is about atomic weapons. But on the 6th of August, exactly in 8:15, Little Man flies over Hiroshima. In 43 seconds, the atomic breath of President Truman creates the early transfers or remakes the early morning in the city in a pure hell with 100,000 victims. People who burn, and from them remain only shadows. Immediately after the return, one of the pilots of the assisting airplanes suicides. 2 days later, you have the Fat Man bombing. 75,000 victims. And the article ends with Truman's official statement. On our arms and on our shoulders lies a great responsibility. We thank God that this responsibility will not be borne by our enemies. We pray to God and let He leads us in the spirit of His intentions when we're using the bomb. This has been the article about the philosophy of destruction, Oppenheimer, and the creation of the atomic bomb. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and see you the next time. Peace and goodbye.